Or that's what David Foote argues in his best-selling new book, Boom, Bust, and Echo: How to Profit from the Coming Demographic Shift. An economics professor at the University of Toronto, Foote has thrown away the gospel of Mill and Marx in favor of the gospel of demographics. That's a branch of sociology that examines patterns in human population. Well, there's nothing new about the science itself. Using it as a tool to determine patterns of the future is very new. Foote uses demographics to predict if there's going to be a real estate boom, where to invest money in the stock market, and what trends to watch for in everything from recreation to shopping. That's made Foote a rather popular man among nervous executives who pay him handsomely to come and explain how to avoid bankruptcy. Foote revels in his newfound popularity. He boldly claims that demographics can actually explain 2/3 of everything. Now, that kind of talk makes me very suspicious. And quite frankly, I was deeply cynical about his book when I began reading it. But annoying as it is to be told that you're very much like everyone else, I got the feeling that maybe the man might just be right. So I met David Foote in a bucolic city park in downtown Toronto, where boomer parents watched as their echo children played on the swings. Of course, I began by demanding to know just how he can actually predict 2/3 of everything.
At the front of the book, we're very, very clear, I think. I'm a professor of economics, all right? So I'm interested in the economic implications of changing demographics. So I'm talking about 2/3 of spending patterns, 2/3 of how people use their time. But I make it very, very clear at the beginning of that book, we don't know anything about voting patterns, so we're not putting any of the political scientists out of their jobs. And we don't know very much about attitudes. We're not interested in particular attitudes, so we're not putting the pollsters out of jobs either. So we're not claiming to be able to do 2/3 of their business, only 2/3 of how people spend their money and time.
Why has it taken so long for somebody, some bright professor, to say, hey, let's apply demographics to retail, to investing, to a real way of reading culture and reading the future?
What I'm doing is putting two disciplines together, sociology and economics. Now, there shouldn't be anything very unique about this, except that most sociologists don't know any economics, and most economists hardly know any sociologists or demography. So what's coming out of this...
Good fences, good neighbors.
Yeah, exactly. And the fences are very high between those neighbors, let me tell you. So what's coming out of this is the power of putting two disciplines together.
So what is the unique insight into demographics that you're offering? You know, when I read the book, sometimes it seems so damned obvious. I think, well, geez, baby boomer, just follow the boom. Where the boom goes, so go the trends.
Yes.
Is there anything more profound at work here?
Well, there's something a lot more profound at work, I think. If you think of it in a technical way, it's nothing but like a spreadsheet. It's like you look at what people do in their lifetime, and we all tend to do different things at different times. We have our kids roughly in our late 20s and 30s. So the whole baby boom now, born between 47 and 66, are all in their 30s and 40s driving their minivans. That's why the minivan's done so well, right? So it's how you spend your money over your lifetime multiplied by the number of people in those age brackets. So it's nothing but a simple spreadsheet. The baby boom is 20 years long, so those at the front end of the baby boom are going to benefit from the knowledge of what the people behind them are going to do. So really the front part of the baby boom did relatively well. They got houses before the boom had driven up the house prices. But those in the back third of the baby boom, those born from 60 to 66 are our true Gen Xers. So those born sort of from 58 through to 66, 67, they've had a really, really tough time.
This is the greatest reason for what I might call slacker chic. In this paragraph here, for the Gen Xers, those poor second half of the baby boomers who are
back quarter
of the baby boomers, whose parents say, hey, get a job, get out there, I did it. And you say, well, these parents, the lucky people born in 1937 or thereabouts, probably don't understand how tough that struggle has been and that they were just lucky. Now, it's almost a victim defense of it's not our fault, we're just victims of a demographic reality. Are people really victims of their demographic situation?
Well, they're certainly their opportunities are very much influenced by the demographic situation, all right? Obviously, the top half of the class will always do much better than the bottom half of the class, wherever they happen to be in their demographic cohorts. But yeah, people are largely a victim of the group around them, and I think it's important to understand it. I think it's important for them to understand it. I think it's important for their parents to understand it.
Especially if their parents are still paying the bills.
Well, exactly. The trouble is the parents had 3 or 4 kids. It's their fault that their children have so much competition.
So it is the parents' fault. Do you find that people resist being categorized? You know, that idea that we all have that, you know, deep down we're deeply individual and nobody's going to tell me that I fit into these set of patterns. And you find that people actually resist fitting into demographic profiles.
You're going to look at me and say, no way am I going to be watching birds when I'm 50. There's absolutely no way you're going to do that, right? Well, I said the same thing at your age.
And?
Guess what? I have a pair of binoculars. My point here is that, and the way to deal with this I found, is to point out to people that it's the 80% of things that you do that's common to everyone else in your age group that's driving my trends. It's the 20% that you do that's different to everyone else that makes you an individual and an interesting person worth knowing.
Right, let's accept demographics and as a tool, and let's use it in the way that people, I think, secretly, when they're alone, want to use it, how to get rich, how to invest.
Well, your generation, anyway.
Oh, yes, not the largesse of the boomers now who are trying to cut back.
No, younger people.
Let's talk about the real estate market, because there was a big boom, and then there was a big bust. Let's just keep using those words.
Mm-hmm.
Now a boomer says, look, I've just got my home, and the interest rates are low. How do they use demographics to predict what to do with their new home or with the real estate market?
Well, again, you need to think through. The book is called Boom, Bust, and Echo. So let's not ignore the children of the boomers, the echo kids. They started to be born around 1980. They're now 16. So they're about 5 years from leaving home. And when they leave home, they move into our center city. So around the turn of the century, the echo kids are going to move into the center city, start renting. So the rental housing market will start coming back up in the first decade of next century, all right? Meanwhile, the boomers all moved into our center cities over the 60s and 70s, and that's why we had tremendous urbanization. And then they moved out to the suburbs to raise their kids over the 80s and 90s, so that's why suburbanization. And they're on their way back to the country. So recreational properties are going to do extremely well. Plus, the front half of the baby boom want a different house for their teenage families than they wanted for their preteen families in their 30s. So the renovation business is going to do relatively well. But it better be quality and service renovation. You make below average lifetime use of the healthcare system until about age 50. And over age 50, you increasingly make use of your doctors. This is the menopause for women and the prostate problems for men. And then in your 60s, you're more likely to use hospitals. So the aging baby boomers are now moving into their above average lifetime use of the healthcare system. So cutting it now means that just when demand is beginning to creep up, it's not going to take off for another decade and a half. But even more importantly, you go to the center cities when you're young. The aging baby boomers are moving out to the suburbs and beyond. So to bring healthcare down into the center city when the people who need it are moving back towards the country has to be one of the dumbest things you can possibly do.
Do you think that then government should be keeping hospitals alive and well in the country, in the rural areas, because we'll be needing those hospitals for rich, aging boomers?
That was a little editorial comment. The aging population is more likely to be in regional areas than in the downtown cores. So yes, I don't think they should be closing hospitals. That doesn't mean we shouldn't be looking at a sort of system, a feeder system, where you have a small hospital in a rural environment and then feeds into a suburban hospital, or feeds into an urban hospital as the problem gets more expensive. Doesn't mean we shouldn't be re-engineering the hospital system, but to automatically close the country hospitals when the aging baby boomers are going to, the people who need hospitals are going to be moving out there, strikes me as a rather senseless policy.